please welcome on stage Neneh Cherry.
I'm just going to say that I'm actually really scared. I hope I can get through this and make a little bit of sense.
We have water.
Oh, good. Actually, I'm going to drink some water straight away.
Cheers. Cheers, everyone.
See if I can rattle my brain cell.
Wow. Okay. So,
Right.
so I'll just start by talking about the show that you're doing, obviously for the festival with Rocket#9.
Yes.
So, could you just maybe just tell us how you met the group and so on?
I met the group through the label called Small Town Super Sound, which the Cherry Thing record, which was a record that came out last year, came out on. Joachim Haglund, who is the guy who runs that label, who's a pretty amazing guy. I think Kieran, if I'm right, Kieran Hebden Fortet, introduced him to Rocket#9. And when he heard the music, he was like, oh, this is kind of like The Thing, but it's electronic. They're a bit like a runaway train, that's not going to hurt anyone. I know there's been horrible runaway train accidents, so careful to not use the term in the wrong way. But so we met, and it was kind of funny. We met. They said, well, come and meet us at this pub somewhere in the East End, just by Old Street. And on the top of the pub, there was this kind of roof terrace with teepees. It was in the middle of the winter. There was a full moon. I mean, it was like very, just sounds really stupid, but it was quite special. And there were these open fires, and we just kind of sat down and like had a powwow, and it was pretty certain straight up that they felt really familiar. They would like, I know you a little bit from somewhere. So we decided to do something. So the first thing we did was just 4 tunes at Giles Peterson's Worldwide Awards, or whatever it's called. And then we did a couple more gigs, and then we went and recorded what has become this album when Fortet was interested in doing it and had some time. And we went to where he stays spent some of his life in Woodstock. And we did 10 tracks in 5 days. Just speaking of steamrolling.
And when it came to doing the festival, obviously you're premiering that album.
Yep.
And did you have any discussion about whether you were going to just throw in like one of those classic Neneh Cherry songs as well, or did you decide you were going to keep it very
that was
pure?
Never in the dialogue.
Right.
I mean, the whole idea of this festival, right, is to premiere new things, right? So hiding a few old ghosts was really part of the plan. And I think there's a time and place for those other songs. I mean, I know that a lot of people kind of might expect them or want to hear them, but this particular thing isn't really about that. And yeah. So there you go.
But I am allowed to ask you about a song called Buffalo Stance.
You are allowed to ask me about it, yes. I don't have a problem with the song. I mean, I love the songs like Man, Child, and Buffalo Stance. I mean, it's a privilege to have been part, or 7 seconds, have been part of the making of those musics,
So I think it's about 24, 25 years ago since that song came out, which makes everyone in the room feel old, not just us.
Celebrate it. I know exactly, because my daughter Tyson was in my belly as that song was, coming to life.
As you were on top of the
And
pops,
she's 24.
Yeah. Right.
So there you have it.
And on that Top of the Pops moment, which is still kind of it's talked about as being controversial. But were you aware that it was controversial, that you were what, it was like 7 or 8 months pregnant and you were on top? Did you think this is I'm challenging stuff here?
Well, Look, I was 8 months pregnant. I didn't really have a choice. I mean, I didn't do it. I didn't go and like get knocked up so that I could be controversial and appear on television. It was, but I think that it became, I mean, it was almost like it protected me. You know, I think that when I went on from doing Rip, Break, and Panic and Float Up CP to have a solo career, there were elements of like the kind of traps that I was sort of allergic or felt that I didn't belong in or that I became aware of from a woman's point of view. And in a funny sort of way, when I got pregnant and I was carrying Tyson through all of this, it was, you know, an extra little added thing that just kind of helped me be able to hold my space. Do you know what I mean? But I think that I wasn't so conscious of it being controversial. I just knew that nothing was going to stop me. And I knew that I didn't feel any less relevant or that it was something that I should hide or that took anything away from my womanhood.
And it's ridiculous that it was controversial anyway, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I remember seeing something in a paper that was just like, it was probably in the News of the World or something. But just like, you know, a comment from a doctor that's saying, well, actually, it's dangerous also. On top of everything, you know, she really shouldn't be doing those things or promoting it in any way. So, but I think, sorry to interrupt you, but I think it also just came very naturally. You know, it was just happening and it was there.
And when you think back that 24 years, you know, and maybe by accident or design, you kind of catch a glimpse of that video or any video around that time. How do you feel about that young woman that you see? Do you feel still a very close connection, or is she kind of in some ways, because of the changes that we all go through as we get older, a little bit of a stranger to you?
Not a stranger to me. I think it's funny because when I look at Buffalo Stance, or if I go even further back, like the other day I was just watching some footage of an old Rip, Break, and Panic concert, I feel very much like I'm holding hands. You know, I mean, it's me, it's not somebody else. But I think you have to allow yourself to move on, you know, and I think that the energy and the spirit, in a way, of that time, I mean, I feel it, I smell it, I feel it very much in a way in myself again now, like a vitality and an energy, I think, because I feel part of something that's happening that feels new and fresh. And it's not a thing of like, you know, when people sort of go, oh, are you having a comeback? It's like, coming back from where? Like, from what? From who? It's, I mean, I can look at those like Buffalo Stance and just think, oh my God, you know, you're such a baby in a way. Or when I hear my voice on those recordings. But I think, you know, it's part of where I am now. It's why I am where I am now. In a way, you know what I mean?
The song's kind of very much about, you know, it's kind of women not really, you know, taking any shit, basically. But you've described it as not a feminist song, and I just kind of wondered why you wanted to kind of avoid that label for that song.
I think it's a really kind of touchy place because obviously I am a feminist, but I think that we were talking a little bit here before this started about how human beings perceive music, and I think everyone interprets what they hear in their own way and has their own relationship with a piece of music or a painting or a play or a flower, whatever. And I think to sort of go, well, this is a feminist song, I don't think it really needed that because it's a song and it's a song for everybody. You know what I mean? Then who I am and what I feel and what I express as a woman, that's another story. But I think that I'm a little bit wary of labels, whether you're saying, oh, it's feminist or this is a very political song. You know, I want you to see it in that way. I think that if it empowers you as a woman, but I mean, I know a lot of guys that have danced around to Buffalo Stance, and it's made them happy. And I think that's how it should be if it can do that.
And the thing is, that's exactly it. It is a song that makes people happy. I mean, it's like, obviously, as a DJ, having played it, since our friend Tony the Greek gave me a pre-release copy of it.
Really?
It's one of those songs that first of all, everyone knows the words to. My 16-year-old daughter knows all the words.
Does she?
To it. Yeah.
That's
and it's one of those, like, you have Rapper's Delight, and you have Ain't Nobody, and you have Buffalo Stance. People know all the words to all those three songs. Yep. And if they don't, they're not on. They're not on our list.
Ain't Nobody is, yeah.
Oh,
so like that. I have that with that song.
Yeah.
I'm on your list. Thank God.
Now, one of the things I wanted to do today was, obviously the audience know a lot about you and etc. But I'm hoping that they'll learn one or two mad little facts that they might not have known. They can go back and spend the whole week telling people a few things. And I'm just wondering if they're things that you even know. Anyway, this is the joy of research. Buffalo Stance existed as a song previously. Morgan McVie did a song called "Looking Good Diving."
Diving.
And
not driving. Yeah.
Not driving. No, Looking Good Diving. Yeah. And on the B side there was a version with a rap, which is very similar to Buffalo Stance.
And a sort of cut up. It was a little bit like if you think of like old reggae tunes where you do, or a remix, or the B side, which was quite often a different version,
But the fabulous fact is that Stott Aiken Waterman produced it.
They produced the A side. The B side was produced by the Wild Bunch, i.e. Nelly Hooper and DJ Milo. So, but obviously the sounds that we used underneath that were pre-produced were produced by Stott Aiken Waterman.
No, I dug that out the other day.
And, there you go.
I think the verse you put out is far better.
Okay. Well, it's a funny story because we'd kind of, myself and my partner, Cameron McVeigh, we were working with a few other people on what became Raw Like Sushi. And we sort of dismissed Buffalo Stance. It was like, oh, that was that thing on the B side of that record. And it was Tim Simonon that appeared one day kind of at my door in Kensal Green going, I really like that song. Can we please recut it? And I was like, okay. Thank God we did.
Hence you name checking Bomb the Bass in the song.
Huh?
You name check Bomb the Bass in the song. Yeah.
Yes.
Some of the work that you've done, and we were listening to, or people who came in early would have heard some of your the material that you've done, and there's been some great collaborations, and I just kind of wondered if I could ask you about a couple of them, and one was on your second album when you did a song with Michael Stipe called Trout. Mm-hmm. Well, how did that combination come about, you and Michael Stipe? It's a great track. It uses, we were saying again, we were backstage, we could just about hear.
Yeah, I hadn't heard it for ages.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah.
And the drum beat is that one.
That one.
That one that everybody was using for about 6 months until Led Zeppelin heard it and thought, we want royalties.
I think there was a crazy battle, actually. I can't remember the details. But, we weren't, it was a bit touch and go for a minute. But how did that come about? I think, I can't remember if this is like when my age starts to dangle itself around in my head. But I think we got in touch with Michael Stipe. I think it was just like, we were in the States, we'd been promoting Raw Like Sushi and traveling around, and REM were everywhere. And I think that some of my friends in LA knew him. Anyway, we got in touch and started a dialogue, and we met in New York in a studio and just kind of put it together, wrote it, did it, sang it, and had a very funny, beautiful, playful time. And then we really became great friends after that. So me and the family went down several times, drove down to Athens, Georgia, I was petrified. I was like, with Cameron, my white husband, I was like, we're going to get lynched. We're going to die. We're going to die on this drive through the
south of Mason-Dixon.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
yeah, we're not going to make it. But we got there. So we did, 2 trips to Athens, Georgia. But I think that's kind of how it came about. I mean, I suppose that's the great thing when, you've had a few things that have gone well. You can sort of get in touch with people and they pay
take
attention.
The call.
Yeah.
You Suit and Door, that song, 7 Seconds, which is just one of the best songs ever.
Really?
Of course it is.
Wow.
I think it's an astonishing song. And I wondered if you knew that your voice was going to sound so wonderful next to his.
I remember doing it and just thinking, God, my voice sounds so limited next to his. It sounds so not bound and gagged, but just so small in a way, because he's got such a kind of forceful range that's kind of unhinged in a way. But in a way, I think that's what, like now when I listen to it, I think in a way that's what ties the song together in a way, is the fact that I'm a bit more like this and he's doing this and doing this. And that,
Well, when you heard it, am I overstating it, calling it astonishing? You've been quite modest about it. But when you heard it, did you not think, wow? Or
No,
do you not?
No, I think I'd be lying if I said that no, I didn't feel anything. And there was something kind of magical and I think to be part of just 1 or 2 things in your life that happen in that way can be enough. You know what I mean? It's something that happens that you can't go back and kind of try and reproduce. And it was interesting because myself and Cameron and Johnny Dollar, who's now passed, unfortunately, we were working, or very sadly, in fact, we were working in my brother's apartment in Brooklyn, New York, in a funny little room. And Johnny had sort of come up with the chords, and Cam had written, like, When a Child is Born, and then I was sitting upstairs kind of fiddling around with the chorus and with the thing of numbers and 7 and I don't know what. And so we had this kind of ground, a basis for the track. And then Yusuf came in the next day, and it was just amazing where, with his range, what started to happen. And he just started to sing, to kind of freestyle. But then I remember it's kind of interesting because Cameron McVeigh, who was there and producing the track, we were all there together, but he was sort of going, now let's try and, form it. Because I think so even for him, there was a certain amount of like editing in a way. And I think there's something about that kind of amazing kind of lift in his voice, but that doesn't quite completely take off, that gives the song maybe an added beauty. But it was definitely a special, memorable.
And I mean, the other thing is obviously,
session.
Like obviously we're in Manchester, and we talk about Manchester this, Manchester that, but that song, it was number 1 in France for something like 13, 14 17 weeks. I mean, and it had real cult. Obviously, the kind of song it was, it had real cultural significance in France. And sometimes in England we kind of forget that there's a world out there of great music, and actually music is changing things in other countries at all time.
France is a very racist country, and I mean it still is. And I spent quite a lot of time in France when I was growing up with my family, and I've started, 3 or 4 years old, really noticing and feeling pains, looking at situations and people around me, noticing that, I don't know, feeling sadness. And I think that 7 Seconds in that way, I think was very important for a lot of people because it had the Wolof, which is Yusu's language. It was also in French, and I think that politically, I couldn't say exactly, but I think it was quite a momentous piece of music for a lot of people. You know. Dare I say? I mean, I don't mean to say that. Sounds a bit. It sounds a bit like I'm blowing a big horn, but I think, yeah, in a way, because I mean, a lot of my other music has done okay there, but 7 Seconds was something else, and I think that still, for people, it's when I go to France, people remember it.
Just another couple of questions about that back catalogue, because obviously, although we have met a couple of times before, you don't remember. We haven't.
I just have to say, and the thing that happened to me when I was a kid in France with my mother, just because it made me think about, it could have been in Belgium, but we got out of our bus. You know, we sort of lived in a VW bus when we were on the road. And we went in to buy bread and milk, me and my mother and my brother Eagle Eye. And the woman in the store, it was a dairy, you know, milk, cheese, baguettes, swept us out of the door. She took her broom and swept us out. Yeah, it's not that long ago. I'm quite old, but I'm not that old. Okay, carry on.
No, that.
It just made, you know, yeah.
I'm gonna ask a totally different question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you then about how, in terms of your kind of own cultural identity and your self-identity, how important is race? How pervasive is it in terms of how you think and work?
I mean, I have always, I'm half Swedish. My mother was Swedish. I moved to back to Sweden 6 or 7 years ago. And it was kind of important for me to do that, I think, because I don't think I really had a lot of time for my Swedish side. But I think I've always seen or felt that I'm Black. I mean, I have, you know, I'm half Swedish, I'm mixed, whatever that means. But I think when I was growing up, I had to kind of consciously decide. And I mean, everywhere I turned, I was a person of color, you know. And so I think that that's what I chose. But ultimately, I'm a human being, you know, and I am a person who belongs in this world as much as anybody else. And I think that is ultimately the struggle that we are fighting. You know, same rights for all. Women, men, you know, yeah.
But in terms of kind of, I don't know. I could probably guess the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. In terms of your kind of responsibility as an artist,
yes,
do you feel, given what you just said, that being Black brings with it a responsibility as an artist to have those issues and talk about those issues and confront those issues and bring them to your work?
I think so. I mean, I think that maybe like going back to what we were talking about before, like, I think that it's very much there. And I think that celebrating, you know, and being proud of my heritage and being aware of what that means is really important. But I think that I'm someone who I like to feel like I'm not within boundaries, and I like to keep labels and identities off. But I do think that it's very important to be outspoken and to be, you know, I mean, we live in a world that's incredibly complex, you know, on so many different levels. And so to be, it's a difficult question, you know. It's a difficult question, and I hope that I'm answering it fairly well. But I think that ultimately I can't I can't speak for the whole world. I can speak for me. But hopefully I have a good consciousness, you know.
Because the Rip, Rig and Panic, we mentioned them earlier. That was the band you were in kind of 81, 83. And I mean, I was a massive fan. They were kind of like a John Peel type band, weren't they? Did a Peel session and etc. And there's lots of things that I wanted to ask you, but I just wanted to share with the audience some of the song titles. She Gets So Hungry at Night, She Eats Her Jewelry, one of the song titles of Rip, Rig and Panic. And this one, which is obviously connected with what we've just been talking about, this is a B-side of a Rip, Rig and Panic single. You should go on YouTube and listen to it. The song is called 1619, a Dutch vessel docked in the USA with 20 humans for sale.
I really...
I mean, at that time, you know, it was, Rip, Rig and Panic were a kind of punk jazz type, but it was very urgent, wasn't it? It was very energetic. It was very wasn't it? Very of the time.
Yeah, it's funny because Gareth Sager wrote a lot of those lyrics, and obviously I didn't sing on all of the songs, but I was like 16 at the time, and I really didn't know what half of the songs meant. I mean, some of the words was like, you know, I've got to think about this for a minute. But I think ultimately I learned so much about songwriting from singing those songs. And yeah, it was urgent. It was crazy. It was spontaneous. It was full of life. It was crazy. I mean, the thing I was just telling you about, the film that I saw from Japan. I was kind of surprised at kind of how organically it all worked and how it kind of flowed, because we didn't really rehearse that much or anything, you know. But I think it was passionate, you know, and I think it was really like about being in the moment, about taking the bull by the horns. It was fairly fearless. And I think that, you know, I'm really thankful that I had that schooling, you know, that I come from that place, that I have that background, that kind of punk rock kind of making your own anarchy kind of DIY thing.
This is like a weird little fab fact. So Rip, Rig and Panic appeared on an episode of The Young Ones.
They did?
Classic, whatever it was called, sitcom.
I wasn't in that one.
And doing a song again with a bit of a daft title, but Gareth probably came up with it. You're My Kind of Climate.
Yes.
Okay. So The Young Ones, which people will remember, they throw a party, but they realise they haven't got a hi-fi. So they say, oh, we haven't got a hi-fi. We've got Rip, Rig and Panic. And Rip, Rig and Panic do You're My Kind of Climate. But for some reason, you're not in it. So you missed out on that opportunity to be in The Young Ones. And your friend Andrea Oliver stepped in. So we've talked about all the great things that you've done, but do you regret missing out on being on The Young
terrible.
Ones? Why did you not do that
I was quite
show?
gutted. I was quite gutted because at the time I was in Sweden having my first baby, Naima. And I remember talking to Andrea on the phone, and they were going to film it or something that day, and I remember feeling a bit left out. It's got to be said. I did. And
then, of course, and the Andrea we're talking about then partnered you in your cooking show. So it all kind of comes together.
She is my closest friend. I mean, we're sisters. She was Sean Oliver, the bass player in Rip Rig, that passed away. She is his sister.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Can I just say that we are going to do questions from the audience, so if you're just sat there going, is he going to talk about da-da-da-da-da, it will be your opportunity. I've just got a couple more things to ask you about. And I want to just talk about the new songs, actually, because, and the songs, I was in the show, I came to the show last night, and in the work that you did with The Thing, which was the album that you did before this one, when you worked with them, was lots of cover versions. But this one, it's correct me if I'm wrong, but this album is all new material, your material.
Yeah.
Your lyrics.
Yeah.
And
not all written by me.
Right.
Actually, I've had a long-term partnership with Cameron, who I keep mentioning, who's also my husband, as it goes. But we've been writing and making music together since the early days. So a lot of the songs, of course, some of them I literally just went and sat on my bed and more or less wrote by myself. But there's always a collaborative effort, and then another guy, Paul Sim, was part of the sort of writing process. But yes, I've written all the songs on all the songs.
Because what they seem to me to be the lyrical content seemed to be to me to be a little bit troubled. There was kind of seemed like quite a lot of trouble. Is that a kind of misreading, or do you feel that some of the lyrics in that album is kind of you expressing, as you always do, expressing your real feeling and your real emotion and your honesty at this time, and they just seem to reflect a bit of a troubled mind? Would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've had it was definitely like my mother died 4 years ago. In August it'll be 4 years, and I totally spiraled out for a year into. I think I was actually traumatized. Like, she died quite suddenly, and we were really close. And maybe it was, yeah. Anyway, it happened, and I for a year just kind of. I don't think I was reachable. I don't feel like I was actually present in, like, here and now. And then after about a year, it was almost like it sounds a little bit, maybe airy-fairy, but it was almost like I could feel my mother, who was a very creative person, just sort of talking to me, telling me that you've got to take this and let it out and make it use it, your pain, your whatever it is, make it into something creative where you're actually going to kind of stay a bit crazy or go crazy. So I started writing, and I think because I've always had kids. I mean, I had my first kid when I was 18. I'm quite comfortable to write sitting on a bed or in a kitchen, or I've always juggled things around, made it work. So I just went in and shut the door and went into my room and started writing. And I think, creativity and music is where ultimately I can say things that I can't actually say even now here. It's a way of making sense, of processing things, of understanding, of opening up. So I think that's all of that is in the songs. But I think even though, there's one called Out of the Black, there's one called Spit 3 Times, which is about, the black dog. And I think even though there are observations, I tried still to be playful or to keep a tongue-in-cheek or to have some irony and to not. I don't think they're about wallowing in darkness. They're about, also the quirkiness of life and the unexpectancy. I mean, after my mom died, I started catastrophizing. It's like anytime anyone left the house, I was like, oh, someone's going to die, or someone can die, or, I just totally lost it. And, I started having therapy, and this woman just said, well, yeah, there is an element to life that's like that. You can't control it. There is that. It's like anything could kind of happen. And so maybe that's the other side that I've tried to look at.
So do you think, having written the songs and recorded them, performed them, has the place that you're in, if you like, changed as a result of being able to express yourself and come through that? Has that actually?
Well, it's a relief. I mean, it's a powerful outlet. And I think another reason for kind of marrying the songs with RocketNumber9 it is kind of important to take it away from maybe being. I mean, they give them a life force, where maybe the songs could have been a bit more wallowing in something else. It kind of pushes them out, which is, I think, is really good because it's a way of ejecting it. And I think finally that's kind of what work is about. It's about doing it, getting it, pushing it out of your system so that you can get on with other stuff. And I think that the energy of the music of Rocket Number 9 does that. And I think that Fortet's production was also about taking stuff away. I thought he was going to add stuff. And he was a bit like, take that away. And so it's quite naked, which kind of freaked me out at first. I was a bit like, God, I'm going to add some reverb. And that singing bit is really out. And he was like, leave it. It's fine. This is what it is,
I think the kind of that minimal thing, I think, is really key, and it's great because it, there's that phrase Beck uses, 2 turntables and a microphone. It's that idea that you don't need much in order to make a lot. Yeah. And so I kind of felt that's what I was getting off the stage. It's like 2 guys and you're in the middle. But, and that helps that urgency, and it helps that thing. I'm going to get it out because we're not waiting to get a choir and, a string section and all that. We're just going to put it straight out.
Just put it straight out there. And I think you can layer and layer and layer stuff. And quite often it's interesting in the studio because the thing that you did initially that you kind of threw out is quite often the thing that you go back to, like after you've spent, 5 weeks kind of putting a bunch of crap all over it. And it's just like, actually, it doesn't sound that good. It was better before. But I think, and that was also the thing with the thing. I mean, I think it suits me that the energy of something that's quite raw and a bit turned inside out. I mean, the thing was like that. It was like, and that was kind of where I first, came back in a way. Like we just went in a studio in Acton and recorded 3 tracks, just one take of each track, which ended up on the album. And it was like, I actually just ended up with a massive migraine afterwards because I think it was just like toxins coming out of my system.
And you've learned the art of the snappy title, with one song being now called Bullshit.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna finish before I ask the audience if they have any questions. I don't know if I can get away with quite a shallow question. You look fantastic for your age, Neneh.
Really?
And I wondered if you could share with us, because that video 25 years ago that we mentioned before, I mean, you haven't changed.
Oh.
How?
I don't think you have a hearing problem. I think you have a seeing problem. Yeah. Thank you.
Come on, you must have a regime.
Actually, I don't really have a regime. I'm actually quite bad at regimes. Like, even keeping my nails together and stuff. I don't know. I think enjoying life. I mean, good and bad days, but just trying to see. That's sort of what I spend quite a lot of my time, even though it's a struggle, of course, but just finding little things, the beauty of little things in life. And then drinking quite a lot of water. That's good. And yeah.
Joy and water.
Joy and water. And a bit of sadness, there's nothing wrong. I mean, I speaking of cultural things, but, like going back to Sweden and sort of embracing that kind of melancholic thing was quite, it was quite important. And I was like, oh, this is the bit of me that's Swedish, the kind of liking the quiet. I've always been drawn more to the sirens, like hanging out on the concrete, and then it was like, oh yeah, this is my other side. And I think a lot of my musical, like my peers, if you look at Massive Attack or whatever, whoever we all are, we're all addicted to a bit of the melancholy. There's beauty there.
Okay, I'm going to see if the audience have any questions. Can I just say that we're not going to do that whole microphone passing around thing because it becomes a bit of a circus. And secondly, I've got shit hearing, so please speak loudly. Oh God, I know everyone in the room. I'm just going to ask my friend Greg to start us off because he traditionally does, and then I will ask Emma because otherwise she'll tweet something horrible about me. And then I'll move on to people I don't know. Greg.
God, I have a whole series of albums from that era, like when that album came out. That because there's a whole, I won't go into a whole long thing, but I'd been living with my grandmother in LA in Compton. And it was the first time I'd really spent a long period of time there. And it really made a deep imprint in me. And when I left from there with my brother to go back to Sweden, I had a stack of records. Songs in the Key of Life was one of them. And funnily enough, we were just talking about that record before it started. I'm saying it's one of the only albums where I literally know all of the lyrics, every single one of them. But then I had like Parliament, Johnny Guitar Watson. Then, of course, I like the Emotions, and then there's other music like The Clash or X-Ray Specs, which has been a really important record for me.
The world turned Dayglow.
Thank you. Oh God, yeah. The brain stands still. But Songs in the Key of Life is like a sort of biblical kind of record, I think.
Emma.
Hi. I don't know that ultimately that the effect of being in different places so much changes the way that I write, because I think ultimately it's a way, like you have a way of doing things, and it's like moving to another country to escape yourself. Like you move and then all the stuff that you were hoping to leave behind follows you there. So I think ultimately I have a way, but I think that it's been kind of interesting being there, because I think like living in a city like Stockholm, there's a lot less like what you have to just to get from one place to another compared to being in London. It's a lot simpler. So in a way you have more time to reflect or to kind of be. And I haven't sort of really spent lots of time kind of really getting into being in Stockholm. Like I have friends and family there. I'm just kind of there when I'm there, which is kind of nice. But I think in my head, I go to New York or I go to London or something to find the places that I want to write about or the situations. I think Sweden is just more maybe a good place to make those journeys or something, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, a question from people that I don't recognise. Yeah, the young man there with the beard. The young man is from Australia. He started with a statement about where he came from, and went on to ask Neneh about Massive Attack and her connections with them.
Yeah, it's another one of those. I was in a group called Rip Rig and Panic, and those members were from another band called the Pop Group, and they were all from Bristol. And basically, I met Daddy G and Nelly Hooper. I think Nelly was like 15, and they were but they were called the Wild Bunch then. They were the basis of what became Massive Attack. And then for different reasons, we like Mushroom came along and did like some of the TV shows with us and stuff, because he's a very good looking kid when we were doing Buffalo Stance and stuff. But basically they were working on music, and then as our thing started to do quite well. I think we'd taken over running our own business. We had a company called the Cherry Berry Organization, and we had a sort of studio in the back room. But I think our philosophy really was, I mean, we've always, myself and Cameron and Judy Blame and the other people who we've been involved with, we've always sort of made families. And I think it was a very obvious thing for us to want to sort of give some of what we had back into something else. So basically Massive Attack started coming up to our house and staying in our back bedroom and recording some of the tracks that became Blue Lines. And yeah, we were kind of like funny families, you know, tricky and 3D, constantly eating up all the cereal in the house. And, you know, and then the sort of project, the Blue Lines thing, moved on to Bristol, and then Jeff Barrow, who then formed Portishead, was the T-boy at the studio. So he was like, oh yeah, here's a tape of my music, and gave it to Daddy G, and Daddy G was like, oh, this is cool, check it out. Then they ended up coming and recording in our, we'd moved by then, sort of had an actual studio in our house and made quite a lot of their tracks there. But yeah, we were just like a kind of funny posse of people who saw, you know, we were just going through things together, you know.
An amazing posse of people as well. You could do all this modest thing. You shouldn't. Amazing posse of people.
Well, yeah, but it's like, it's the thing, isn't it? When you're just there, it's like ridiculous to make more out of it than it actually was, because we were
so
just
you were in your house
there, kind of doing stuff, and Shara was singing on the landing, and it was quite chaotic.
And Tyson was just being born at the time when all those Blue Lines tracks. So you were in a house, and Tyson was tiny, and they were making Blue Lines in the back room.
Yeah. We'd be lying in the bedroom, and then they'd all be soaring through the house. But it was like kind of crazy, but like a normality. And I think, you know, I'm not just being modest. It's just kind of how it was. You know, it's like, I don't think any of us really knew where it was all going to end up, or that Massive Attack would be down the road, you know, doing their thing with Mr. Curtis. You know, it was just, okay, this is what we do. Let's just do it. You know, but of course, it was a really massive inspiration and influence, like hearing them making their music whilst I was coming out of the Raw Like Sushi thing and actually feeling a little bit OD'd on jumping around, going, what is he like? You know, like kind of, and I think that experience of that more of the bass, you know, the more melancholic thing, it was like, I needed to hear that and feel it, because I needed to dig deeper in myself. And I think Homebrew ultimately was a more thoughtful, you know, another page.
I thought I was going to have the weird facts, but the fact that 3D and Tricky ate all the breakfast cereal is probably better than anything I could have found all day on Wikipedia.
Absolutely vexed with them. I'd be like, I've got to get kids to school. You've eaten all the bloody Cocoa Pops.
So it's like...
or they would just buy cocoa. They'd eat the good cereals and replace it with Cocoa Pops. It's like,
I think they might have skinned up and then got the munchies.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
They would skin up and then eat the cereal all night. It wasn't that they had it for breakfast. That's not, no. I would get up to the... Yeah. You got it.
Yeah, on the... Sorry, right, the young lady on the aisle at the back. Disparate music. What was the common thing that for you and RocketNumberNine?
I think with us it's quite Neanderthal. It's like, it's not so much like, oh, you do this and you do this. We just came together without discussion, and you know, like with some of the tracks, we just sent them vocals for them to put their music on. And I think it's almost like instinctual, the what we share. And even though, like, you know, they've got a sound that's theirs that's kind of maybe different to my thing or whatever. But I think that it's it belongs together. I think we belong together in a weird sort of way in the times that we share. Is that an answer to that question, or is that not an answer?
He's happy.
Is he?
Yeah, I can tell.
Okay.
Row B, yeah.
Hi.
The questions about Neneh's work with the.
Matt Johnson called me up and said, would I like to do a duet with him? He said, oh, I've been wanting to do, he was really kind of morose. Oh, wanting to do a duet with someone. Oh, I don't know. I can't find any girls that were women's, that I would like to do with it. But I was listening to you, and I was wondering whether you would like to sing this song with me. So, and I said yes. Like, what an honor. So, and we had a really funny time, of course. I think we recorded the song, then we got totally pissed. I don't think Matt drinks anymore, but I think we literally consumed a bottle of vodka, and I just had the funniest time. And then Tim Pope, of course, made the video, and that was quite funny because it was freezing. I had to get tied down to a railroad track in somewhere outside Birmingham in the freezing cold with a steam train driving towards me. But yeah, he just phoned me in my funny council flat in Fulham Court. I was like, oh my God, it's Matt Johnson on the phone. Yeah.
Have you done any collaborations of that kind? I mean, you've done many of them, and we've talked about a few of them. Have there any that haven't worked and you've had to kind of just kick it in the head and forget it? That you can tell us about.
That I could tell you about. God, I should be able to think of something, but I can't. But I know that I can't remember. I'm not trying to hide anything, I promise.
You're in denial.
But I'm not. I've just blocked them out of my head. I can't think right now.
But they
Sorry.
exist somewhere.
But they exist. I mean, obviously, you don't know. Like when you go in with someone, like the idea might seem like a great idea, and then when you actually get to it, it's maybe not. That you don't. The chemistry isn't quite right. I mean, I think usually if I get the inspiration, I think that I really want to work with someone. It can be what they're doing and how they sound, but I think the meeting is ultimately really important. And I think that was the thing, going back to your question maybe about RocketNumberNine, like without even knowing like really what they sounded like. I mean, I had just heard a couple things. It just felt right. And so I don't think we doubted on any level that it was going to work, because a lot of it is chemistry, it's this. That is what makes the things that can happen in a room happen in a way.
Okay, I'm just going to take two more questions, and I'm going to go with the young lady there next to the man with the scarf.
I think I went through a period after sort of Buffalo Stance and that whole era where I became quite self-conscious about my voice. And I think that I was trying to kind of control it in a way that my voice isn't really about. I mean, I don't think that I'm I have hopefully soul in my sound, but I'm not like a classic soul singer in that way. I think that something happened, for instance, when I came back to do the Thing record, where I wasn't thinking about, I stopped to worry. I didn't have time to worry about how it sounded. I just let it go. And it was a bit like finding my wings again. And I think that's why the music that I'm making now has more fire and edge, because I think I am at my happiest singing in these kind of elements, where it's a bit fierce. But I think that maybe when I started singing, I just kind of sang and I didn't really think about it so much. And then, of course, like I was saying, I got to a point where maybe I was thinking about it a bit too much. And now I've found a place where I suppose I have more control. I've, worked a lot with my voice. So it's maybe fuller, it's maybe stronger. I feel like I can rely on it more, but I still try to be playful and to, not preconceive everything that I do and worry about whether it sounds amazing. But I think that my voice is probably a bit fuller than it was then. But then, hopefully, as you get older, they say, maybe it'll get really deep. It's yet to come.
Last question, from the Ed. Hi, Ed. Last question. So the question was about the process. Is it a kind of osmosis where Neneh works and meets people and lives in different places? How all that influences her work?
I mean, I think that in a way I really give thanks, because I think that I've been really lucky to be surrounded by people who kind of live for their work, and not in that kind of, I've got to go to the office and, like in a careerist kind of way, but where they are really, truly passionate. It's not something that stops and starts as you go on and off the stage, for instance. And I think when I was growing up, the musicians that I grew up around that were my father's peers and so on, or people that were just around him. I mean, he attracted quite a lot of young kind of students or whatever. But they were really like, I mean, their instruments were like their children. Do you know what I mean? And I think, and then when I look at my own journey, like meeting the Slits and Rip Rig and Panic and, Portishead and Massive Attack. And, I think that it's something that I can see that myself and the people that I'm drawn to, that it sort of carries on. That thing of that it's like it's with us, we're lifers in this, and I think that living in different places obviously has played an important part, because like little bit like the sort of cultural thing that I was talking about, because I was born in Sweden and I didn't feel that I was Swedish in the same way as the people that were around me. When I went to, because I also grew up in New York, I would totally immerse myself in Black culture, like heal myself with, Black radio, Black music, Black hair products. It was like, this is I fit in here. But then also there was that part of me that wasn't like completely, like I had a family on 143rd Street and, friends that I would hang out with from like and then it was still like, well, I'm not totally like from here either, because people go, well, where are you from? Well, I'm from Sweden and kind of from here. And then I think that's why I ended up staying in England, because I didn't constantly have to explain who I was or where I came from or why, or, what does that mean? It was just like here, there was just a situation where it didn't really matter who you were, what your background was, what color you were. People were just being creative and making different kinds of music and still being connected to each other. It was kind of amazing. So I think that's why ultimately, that's kind of why I stayed in London for a long time. But now I suppose, in a way, sometimes it's a weird loneliness, like when you kind of come from different places. But it's also like a kind of a great thing, because you sort of you have home in different places. It's like I suppose it's like just, we're all individuals. You have the self, and ultimately that's your home, in a way.
I'm going to finish with just a little bit of clumsy stage managing. Could you come and just come into the middle of the aisle to take a photograph? Just one thing I'd like to do anyway, because I want to thank you for your amazing 30-odd years of inspiration and music, and I want to thank you for coming to Manchester.
It's an honor to be here.
The stage managing extends to me crossing over you in a really impolite way.
Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, Neneh Cherry.
Listen, thank you so much for sitting and standing it for listening to me blabbering on. But it's been a joy and a pleasure. Thank you so much.